The Archive as Empire. On Edward Said's Orientalism. Few books published in the humanities in the 20th century changed the shape of an entire field the way Edward Said's Orientalism did in 1978. Said, a literary scholar at Columbia and a prominent Palestinian intellectual, set out to answer a deceptively simple question. What was the Orient, as it appeared across 2 centuries of European scholarship, literature, art, and colonial administration? And what work did that construction actually do in the world? His answer, developed across close readings of philologists, novelists, travel writers, and colonial officials from the late 18th century through the 20th, effectively founded postcolonial studies as an academic field and permanently altered how literary studies, anthropology, history, and international relations think about the relationship between knowledge and power. The 25th anniversary edition, published in 2003, shortly before Said's death, adds a new preface written in the shadow of September 11 and the buildup to the Iraq War, in which Said argues with evident urgency that the book's core claims had, if anything, become more rather than less relevant. The core argument said's central claim, drawn substantially from Michel Foucault's account of discourse and power, and from Antonio Gramsci's concept of cultural hegemony, is that the Orient was never simply a geographic region awaiting objective description. It was, and largely remains, a discursive formation, a body of accumulated European texts, images, and institutional knowledge that constructed the East, and above all, the Arab and Islamic Middle East, as the essential structuring other against which Europe defined itself. Irrational, where Europe was rational. Static and timeless, where Europe was dynamic and historical. Despotic, where Europe was free. Sensual and feminized, where Europe was masculine and controlled. This body of knowledge, which Said calls Orientalism, was not a neutral academic enterprise running parallel to European colonial expansion. It was constitutive of that expansion, providing the categories, vocabulary, and expertise through which colonial rule justified and administered itself. Orientalist scholarship did not simply describe the Orient. In Said's most quoted formulation, it produced the Orient as an object of knowledge inseparable from the exercise of power over the people that knowledge claimed to describe. Said traces this apparatus across an extraordinary range of material, from the founding of academic Orientalist philology in France and Britain through canonical literary figures including Flaubert, Kipling, and Nerval, to the mid-20th century American area studies establishment that succeeded European colonial scholarship as the Cold War's primary institutional producer of expertise on the Middle East. His argument is that this tradition, for all its internal variety and genuine scholarly erudition, operated within a remarkably stable set of underlying assumptions about Oriental difference and inferiority that persisted across national traditions, historical periods, and shifts from colonial to post-colonial power. Assumptions so deeply embedded that even scholars who intended no political harm reproduce them as simply the common sense of their field. What the book gets right. The book's most durable contribution is methodological. It demonstrated, with an unprecedented density of textual evidence, that academic knowledge production is not insulated from political power, but can be one of its primary instruments. That philology, literary criticism, and area studies could function as forms of what Said, following Foucault, calls power/knowledge, in which the authority to define and describe a people is itself a form of domination over them, independent of and prior to direct military or administrative control. This insight reshaped not just Middle East studies, but the entire framework through which scholars in anthropology, history, and literary studies began to interrogate their own discipline's colonial origins and complicities, and it gave a generation of post-colonial scholars, including Gayatri Chakravorty Spivak and Homi Bhabha, who developed related but distinct theoretical frameworks, a shared point of departure. The book's political urgency, evident in the original 1978 text, and made explicit in the 2003 preface, written amid the post-9/11 War on Terror and the American invasion of Iraq, has also proven durably relevant. Said argued that the same civilizational binary, a rational, threatened West confronting an essentially different, threatening East, continued to structure Western media coverage and policy discourse about the Muslim world decades after decolonization had formally ended, a claim that subsequent media and policy analysis of the post-9/11 period has substantially borne out, where the argument strains Orientalism has generated one of the largest and most contentious secondary literatures of any humanities text of its era, and the criticisms come from multiple, often mutually opposed directions. Traditional Orientalist scholars rejected the characterization of their field wholesale. The historian Bernard Lewis, one of Said's most direct targets, published a sustained rebuttal, arguing that Said had misrepresented and homogenized a diverse, often rigorous, and frequently self-critical scholarly tradition, collapsing serious philological and historical scholarship together with colonial propaganda and popular Orientalist fantasy as though they were interchangeable. Lewis and later critics, including Ibn Warraq, argued the book contained significant factual and historical errors and treated genuine scholarly achievement as merely an alibi for domination. Marxist critics argued Said's Foucauldian framework displaced material analysis. Ijaz Ahmad, in Theory, 1992, offered an influential left critique, arguing that Said's reliance on discourse analysis, at the expense of sustained attention to political economy, class relations, and the material history of colonialism, produced an account of Orientalism as a free-floating textual tradition, somewhat detached from the concrete economic and political interests it served. Ahmad also pointed to attention in Said's own position as an elite, Western-educated literary humanist critiquing a Western humanist tradition from within its own institutions, a critique of positionality that recurs across responses to the book. The book has been accused of essentializing the West, even as it criticizes Orientalism for essentializing the East. Several critics have noted an internal tension. Said's account in building a singular continuous Orientalist discourse running from the 18th century to the Cold War across French, British, and American traditions risks flattening real differences within and between these national scholarly traditions, and largely omits other traditions of Orientalist-style knowledge production, including German and Russian scholarship on the East, and says comparatively little about parallel discursive constructions of East Asia, leaving the book's geographic and disciplinary scope narrower than its theoretical claims sometimes imply. Foucauldian anti-humanism sits uneasily with Said's own humanism. Said draws heavily on Foucault's account of discourse operating with relative autonomy from individual intentions, yet Said was, throughout his career, a committed humanist critic invested in individual authorial agency, moral responsibility, and the capacity of intellectuals and writers to think and act outside inherited discursive structures. A tension Said himself acknowledged in later reflections, including material added to subsequent editions without fully resolving it. The Oriental subjects of Orientalist discourse remain comparatively voiceless within the book's own frame. Said's analysis focuses overwhelmingly on European and American producers of Orientalist knowledge, and comparatively little on how the peoples being represented understood, contested, or resisted that representation on their own terms. An imbalance Said partially addressed in his later book Culture and Imperialism, 1993, which gives considerably more attention to anti-colonial resistance and counter-narrative, but which some critics still regard as insufficiently developed within Orientalism itself. Gender is present, but under-theorized. Said repeatedly notes the sexualized and feminized imagery through which Orientalist texts represented the East, but does not develop a sustained gender analysis of this pattern, a task later taken up more fully by feminist postcolonial scholars, including Maida Yeanolu, whose work extends Said's observations into a fuller account of how gender and sexuality structured Orientalist representation. Why the book still matters. The scale and persistence of this critical literature is, in an important sense, a measure of the book's success rather than a sign of its failure. Few works generate 3+ decades of sustained, serious engagement from historians, literary critics, and theorists across the political spectrum, unless they have fundamentally reset the terms of a field's central questions. Whatever specific claims have been revised, qualified, or contested since 1978. Said's foundational insight that representations of other peoples and cultures are never simply neutral descriptions, and that the authority to know and describe a people has historically been bound up with the power to dominate them, remains one of the indispensable starting points for any serious study of culture, empire, and knowledge, which is exactly why the debate around it has never really ended. Note: this essay engages Said's arguments and the surrounding critical debate in summary and analytic form. For direct engagement with his reasoning, consult the original text and its 2003 preface, alongside Bernard Lewis's critical response, Aijaz Ahmad's In Theory, and Said's own later work, Culture and Imperialism, which extends and revises several of the book's central claims,